All over North America, you will find places suitable for all different types of tourists. You have parks like Disneyland and Six Flags for the theme park enthusiasts, and you have sites like Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon for those seeking out awe-inspiring wonders of nature. However, this continent also has its fair share of locations that have been deemed too disturbing, too frightening, or too dangerous for sightseers to be allowed to visit. Hello, I'm Andrew Boyd, and though I have become a permanent tourist of this lifeless dimension where I am forced to listen to this generic, spooky music on a loop, I am still capable of taking you on a tour of the top 5 scary places in North America where tourists are banned. Let us begin our journey. Number 5. Area 51, Nevada. Starting out our list, we have the most obvious entry. In the American state of Nevada, you will find no shortage of places to go on vacation. Despite being a desert, you will find locations like the Hoover Dam, Red Rock Canyon, and of course, the various casinos and attractions in Las Vegas. Of course, a location that you will not find yourself getting into is the military base located on the salt flats of Groom Lake, which is colloquially known as Area 51. For years, Area 51 has been the subject of conspiracy theories involving everything from government testing to UFO activity. Adding to its mystique is the fact that the US government wouldn't even officially acknowledge that it existed until 2013. Its official use is apparently the testing of experimental aircraft, but the level of security at the base is extremely high, even for a government base. Employees of Area 51 are flown in on a private airline known as Janet Airlines, with Janet being an acronym that stands for just another non-existent terminal. Some former employees have reported getting paid through private companies that they have no involvement with in order to avoid a paper trail linking them to the base. Some theories about the purpose of Area 51 include it being used to develop energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative, to develop time travel technology, and most infamously, for studying, storing, and reverse engineering the remains of crashed alien ships, including those that were found at the Roswell crash site. As it is a closed-off and secret government facility, tourists are of course not allowed to get into the site, with signs around the perimeter promising prosecution and possibly even deadly force against trespassers. Of course, this hasn't stopped alien enthusiasts from making the journey to Nevada to see the number of Area 51 and alien-adjacent attractions, such as bus tours of the extraterrestrial highway, the Black Mailbox, and the outskirts of this secret government facility. Number 4. The Princess Theatre, Alberta. In the Canadian city of Edmonton, Alberta, there is no shortage of movie theaters, with multiple malls housing multiple multiplexes, enabling local cinema lovers to watch the latest in entertainment. However, for many years, the crown jewel for movie lovers in Edmonton was not the Cineplex in West Edmonton Mall, or even the Garneau Theatre, which shows independent and classic films. No, for many years, the most classic of the theaters was the Princess Theatre on White Avenue. Built in 1914 for a then staggering $75,000, this 3-story single-screen theater would show moving pictures, concerts, and vaudeville acts, while also having a basement billiards parlor for those not interested in the shows. The theater was known for implementing extremely novel and modern elements, such as a fireproof projection room, an electric time projection clock, an electronic ticketing machine, forced air ventilation, and even refrigerated fountain beverages. The theater was soon drawn into economic hardship and was forced to construct rental apartments on the upper and lower floors. One of these apartment renters was soon met with a tragic and disturbing end. According to local legend, an engaged woman lived in one of the upper apartments, but mere days before she was due to be wed, she was scorned by her fiancé. She was found hanging from the rafters while dressed in her wedding dress. In the years that followed, employees and patrons of the princess reported seeing a ghostly woman wearing a white dress who would suddenly appear and disappear, ascending the theater's grand staircase, wandering its ornate gold-leafed halls, or even hovering over the projection room. The princess was a staple for local cinema lovers, as well as fans of the paranormal for decades. But if you were interested in taking in a show or catching a glimpse of the ghostly bride, you may have missed your window, as the theater closed its doors after 108 years of operation in mid-2022. No new owners or plans for the historical theater have been announced, and the doors remained remained locked to the public, with only the ghosts still residing inside of this historic building. Number 3. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, Virginia. In a world that seems to constantly be on the brink of disaster, it is comforting to know that the US government has a safe location where the elite and powerful will be safe from destruction they most likely caused. Such is the purpose of the US Department of Homeland Security operated base located near Bluemont, Virginia. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, otherwise known as the High Point Special Facility, has been in operation since the late 1800s, when it was used as a simple weather station. In 1928, the observatory building became President Calvin Coolidge's summer White House, before being used as a civilian public service facility where conscientious objectors could serve the government during World War II without having to go into conflict. In 1959, an underground facility was completed and designated Area B. The other buildings that were referred to as Area A became training facilities for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Around this time, it became a relocation site for high-level civilian and military officials in the event of a national disaster, such as an attack or massive natural disaster. It plays a major role in many of the United States government's contingency plans for maintaining the continuity of government. It has a high-frequency radio system, which connects it to most federal public safety agencies, which allows the president to access and use the emergency alert system so that they can broadcast emergency alerts or warnings. An example of its use was on September 11th, 2001, when the majority of congressional leadership were taken from Washington by helicopter and evacuated to Mount Weather. The National Art Gallery has also developed a program that would have the country's most valuable paintings helicoptered over to the facility in the event of an attack, in order to make sure important cultural pieces are preserved in the event of an attack that would otherwise destroy them. Obviously, this site is off limits to all but the most high level of people, and it is not open for tourists. But if you are nearby and see a large group of frantic-looking officials arriving by helicopter, or you see a message on TV from the president being broadcast from this facility, be very afraid, as it means that something terrifying and horrible has or is about to occur. Number 2. Boblo Island Amusement Park, Ontario. North America has no shortage of amusement parks for families and thrill seekers alike to visit. The Canadian province of Ontario has several to choose from, including Canada's Wonderland, Great Wolf Lodge, and Splashtown Niagara. One theme park that you won't be able to buy a ticket for, however, is the Boblo Island Amusement Park, located on the island of Bois Blanc, just above the mouth of the Detroit River. The park was opened in 1898 and used a ferry system to service guests from Ontario and Detroit and bring them to the island, where they had a variety of attractions to keep them occupied and having fun. Some of these included the Falling Star, a log flume, a theater, a sky tower, a Ferris wheel, a zoo, a carousel, and a dance hall, financed by Henry Ford himself. It also had 3 roller coasters: the Screamer, the Nightmare, and the Sky Streak. It also had Boblo's scoot boats, which were essentially aquatic bumper cars. The park operated for many years before eventually closing down for financial reasons in late 1993. There are still ferries that operate in order to get island residents on and off the island, but the now abandoned amusement park has been declared off limits by the property owners. Of course, the dilapidated carousel building, dance pavilion, and sky tower have since proven to be too appealing for urban explorers to keep away from, and the eerie overgrown site still sees a variety of visitors. Like any good amusement park, it of course has a reputation for being haunted by a variety of ghosts. My personal favorite of the ghost stories is the story of Smiley the Magician. Back when the theater still operated and showed a variety of different performers, one of the most consistently booked performers of the 30s and 40s was a magician named Smiley Smilovich. Smiley was an old-school magician who had trained with Houdini in the late 20s and was known for his seemingly death-defying tricks. One of his most famous tricks was a metamorphosis trick, where he would put a trunk on stage, climb into it, lock it, and then have the trunk set on fire. He would escape through a trap door, the trunk would burn away, revealing that he had escaped, and the crowd would go wild. One day he was doing this trick as usual, but when he locked himself in the trunk, he had a heart attack and died. The trunk was set on fire, and the audience was left in terror as Smiley's body burned in front of them. Ever since then, Smiley's ghost would apparently haunt the theater, being sighted watching shows that were performed there, showing a special interest in magic shows. In the years since the park's closure, the occasional rumor of the magician being spotted has come up from the various urban explorers checking out the overgrown buildings. Would you ever be brave enough to explore Boblo Island Amusement Park? And if you did, would you be on the lookout for spectral magicians? Number 1. North Brother Island, New York. The North Brother Island is one of 2 small islands located in the East River of New York City. The island remained uninhabited until 1885, with the only trace of humanity being a small lighthouse that was erected in 1869. The island began seeing more use in 1885 when the Riverside Smallpox Hospital moved from Roosevelt Island to North Brother, when their mission expanded to treating and isolating victims of other quarantinable diseases such as typhoid, tuberculosis, and especially polio. In 1904, a steamship called the General Slocum was set ablaze, and over 1,000 people perished, either from the fire or from drowning while trying to escape, and ended up washing ashore on the island. One of the most famous residents at the hospital was Mary Mallon, otherwise known as Typhoid Mary, who was confined on the island for 20 years until her death in 1938, after having been declared a public health menace for infecting between 51 and 122 people while working as a cook. As public health measures like vaccines began to be adopted in the 30s and 40s, the need for a quarantine hospital lessened to the point where the hospital was closed. It was converted into housing for war veterans who were going to school in the city following World War II, before being converted into a rehabilitation facility for young people suffering from substance abuse issues. But it was closed in 1963 due to the cost of upkeep and the widespread corruption of the staff. In the years since, it was considered for a variety of purposes, including housing for the homeless and an extension of the jail at Rikers Island. But the danger of the unmarked manholes and the advanced dilapidation of the buildings, which are mostly collapsed and overrun by poison ivy, resulted in such ideas being abandoned. It was eventually decided that the site would serve as a bird sanctuary for herons and other wading shorebirds. Although many of the original 25 buildings are still standing in some shape or form, it has been made off limits to the public and is only available for supervised visits for those intending to go ashore for, quote, compelling academic and scientific purposes. With its history of confinement and death, perhaps it is best that this site has been deemed unfit for public visitation, although the history of the island is indeed compelling. What makes an enjoyable tourist destination for one will be very different for another. But even if any of these sites have struck your fancy, remember that the powers that be have decided that they are too dangerous, too private, or too frightening to allow normal civilians to set foot in them. Speaking of powers that be, the dark forces that run this dimension have asked that I remind you to like, comment, and subscribe, or you may find yourself a permanent tourist of this dark dimension, where you will be forced to host videos on the macabre and the disturbing, here on Top 5 Scary Videos.